Welcome back to another episode of Eerie Excursions, the podcast that takes the road less travelled and a left turn into the shadows with me, Amy, a history nerd who loves a good ghost story. Now, I'm no expert, so along our eerie adventure, we'll meet local guides who know all about the spooky legends lurking in their back garden. And watch out, because we might just be down the road from where you are right now. For today's trip, we're in the south of England, in the city of Oxford.
So the theory is that he, regretting what he did so badly, is coming back as the ghost, and he's trying to find the body of Lord Grandison by digging up holes and so on. But he never will find him, because he's gone.
You ready to delve into the darkness? I bet I can guess what's the first thing you think of when I say Oxford. It's the university, isn't it? I mean, of course it is. And if you have been to the city, you'll know that the university takes up a lot of space. But there were people who lived in the city before higher education came calling, and there is a history beyond the university's prestigious college walls. Now, we'll get into all of that in a second, but firstly, let's meet our guide.
I'm Rob Walters. I've been guiding for just 20 years now. You can see I've got a green badge on. Oh, you can see that, Annie. Other people can't see it. And you do a long course for that to become a proper guide in Oxford. About 6 months. It costs quite a lot of money, but I really enjoyed it. If I'd never done any guiding afterwards, I still would have enjoyed having done it. Before that, I was very much in the technology world, telephones and internet and all that sort of thing. I had a change of life. I became a guide and a writer.
Beyond guiding, Rob has also written a book on Oxford's ghosts.
Someone asked me to write the book, another guide. A History Press is the publisher, and they came to her, and we were both guys with ghost stories, although she was my teacher, actually. And she didn't feel up to writing the book, and I very much did, because I was getting into writing then. So I wrote the book. I'm not an expert on ghosts, by the way, but there's some good stories in there. I actually I made one up.
Oh, really?
Good God. That upsets the really serious ghost people, and there are clues in the book as to which one I made up.
Interesting, it's like a mystery.
Yes, like a mystery, yeah. Oxford is redolent with ghost stories, as you can imagine. There was a survey of some sort done through Manchester. It started in Manchester to find all the most haunted places in England. And Oxford turned out to be the most haunted at that time, actually. Yeah, partly because of the university being here.
So we'll get to the haunted part of Oxford in a second. Firstly, and as always, let's put it all into our historical context. So here's Rob with a brief history of Oxford.
Oxford divides into town and gown. So townspeople and gownspeople. The students always used to wear gowns. Everybody did from the university, and the town people didn't. So town came before city. Many people do not know, but you have to have a cathedral, or had to have, until 10 years ago, to be a city in this country. Oxford didn't get its cathedral until the 16th century, but it began round about the year 700. But not that far from here. If you went to the very centre of Oxford, and went down a street that used to be called Fish Street, actually, you would get to the River Thames. Now, at the River Thames, before Oxford was here, there was a ford. And the oxen used to cross that ford, pulling their carts behind them. So it became known as the Oxen Ford. Oxford itself began very near to there in the grounds of what is now Christ Church, where the cathedral is. And it took the name Oxenford and it got shortened to Oxford. So that's our beginning, 700 years ago. Now, your listeners won't be able to see this, but this is the badge of Oxford. And you can see at the top there's a red thing, that's the oxen, and the wavy blue lines are actually the river.
How long has the university been here?
I'm one of the few people who can give an exact date, 1214. It's very complicated, you can imagine. There isn't one date, really. There was teaching here in the 11th and 12th century. But in 1214, the Pope's emissary was here to sort out the problems between town and gown. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of killing, actually. And in 1214, he wrote a letter, an emissary, to the Pope, actually mentioning Oxford University by name. And that document, a copy of that document, is in the Bodleian Library, which is near us. So I regard that as a true start, making it the third university in Europe.
Now, our first story takes place where I meet Rob at Jesus College. So I just want to take a step back for just a second to explain the colleges for anybody who isn't familiar with how collegiate universities are set up. Now, Oxford has over 30 colleges. When a student first enters a university, they are assigned a college. And no, I don't mean there's a sorting hat ceremony. It's often the student's choice and is usually based around the course that they're choosing to study. Now, at these different colleges, students have their lessons, oftentimes. Each college has its own dining hall, bar, common room, library, and various groups and societies. Actually, in the summer, a few of them open up and you can stay there. I've heard it's pretty cool and you can stay in some pretty historical places as well. So back to Jesus College and the spectre that lurks in the garden there.
We're standing in Turl Street at the moment. Turl Street's an interesting one in Oxford. We have 39 colleges and 3 of them are along this fairly short street. So I'm looking at the building opposite at the moment, and that's Exeter College from 1314, which makes that the 4th oldest of the 39 colleges. And the one I've got my back to at the moment I'm going to talk about is Jesus College. Okay, so I'm standing where I usually give this particular ghost story. It's an interesting one. It's got lots of connections with the history of Oxford. So, and it involves a lady called Lady Ogilvy. She was actually the wife of the principal of this college. By the way, colleges have different names for their heads. Sometimes it's head, sometimes principal, master, and so on. In this case, it's a principal. And she went on, actually, to become principal of one of the ladies' colleges later in life. And she lived in the lodging of this college behind me, Jesus College, with her husband. So that's the start of the story. Story is actually dated back to 1947, a very important year, 1947. Do you know why?
I can't think why.
The new Bodleian Library, which is not far from where we are now, was built at that time. India got its independence back, yes, in 1947. Jimmy Brown, the song Jimmy Brown, some of your listeners will know it. Bong, 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 all the chapel bells were ringing. That comes from 1947. The sound barrier was crossed in 1947, and I was born in 1947. So this story is from that time. They'd gone to bed. It was fairly dark. They'd gone to bed, not particularly early or anything like that. And the principal fell asleep. He liked to sleep very much. But Lady Ogilvy could not. Something was keeping her awake. In the end, she knew it was a dog. She could hear a dog barking, and that was completely wrong. Dogs were not allowed in college at that time. I don't think they are now. There is one dog in one of the colleges, actually, and I reported it to the porter. I said, there's a dog in the cathedral. He said, that's not a dog, that's a cat. That is the principal's cat. It's renamed a cat because dogs are not allowed at all. Anyway, she heard a dog, and she got up and went to the window and looked outside, and their garden is just behind the doorway, which is behind me now. And she looked out onto their garden, a very nice garden, and there was someone there digging. Very interesting. So she was amazed, and she looked closely at this person. He was digging a hole, and then he moved to another place. He was digging a hole. He was dressed in very old-fashioned costume. So she rushed back to her husband, woke him up. Very difficult to wake him up. She said, "There is somebody digging up your garden." And he said, "I cannot be bothered with that." He loved his sleep. "I've got an important meeting in the morning. I'll deal with it in the morning." And he wouldn't deal with it. So she had to try to get to sleep, which was very difficult for her, of course, at the time. Anyway, they got up fairly early and went straight down to the garden to see the damage, and there was none. Nothing there at all, no holes. The grass was not disturbed or anything like that. Very, very, very strange. So he said, "There we are, I'm sure you imagined it," and went off to work. She said, "I'm going to research this. I'm going to find out what's going on." So she did. She went to the annals and various records in Oxford, including those in the Bodleian Library, and she found out, she already knew this actually, that Oxford was the capital of England during the Civil War, from 1642 to 1646. Very important point in the story, actually, because also during that period, during the Civil War, it was the King's people here, the Royalists were here, the Puritans and so on had London, of course. So during that time, this college that we're talking about now, Jesus College, was reserved for the wives of the important members of the army of the king. So this is relevant to the story, as you will see. So she also found that there was a particular lady here called Lady Grandison. Her husband, of course, was Lord Grandison, and he was a very important figure. If you read about the Civil War, you will come across Lord Grandison. He was injured badly in Bristol, and he had to make his way injured back to here to recover from his injuries. It would have been a dreadful journey, I'm sure. No trains or anything like that in those days. So he came back, and the first place he came to, of course, was Jesus College to see his wife. He knew which room she was in. He went straight there and found her in bed with another man. Good God, this is terrible, isn't it? Not only was he near to death through injury, he comes back to find his wife deceiving him in this way. There was a fight between the lover and Lord Grandison, and sadly, the lover killed Lord Grandison. And they buried his body in the garden that I keep talking about all the time here. So the theory is that he, regretting what he did so badly, is coming back as the ghost, and he's trying to find the body of Lord Grandison by digging up holes and so on. But he never will find him, because he's gone. He was exhumed by his daughter, actually, who's quite famous in history. Her name is Lady Barbara Castlemaine. She was the chief mistress of Charles II. Charles II followed the Civil War, as you probably know. So she had his body exhumed and moved down to the cathedral, which is in Christ Church. So that explains the story to a certain extent. The only other thing is Jesus College are still looking for the wife, because she built an enormous bill for food and drink while she was here and never paid.
I wonder if you put her lover on that bill as well.
I don't know. That's a good question, actually. Those things we will never know.
From Jesus College, we turn right and then an immediate left to walk past the Radcliffe Camera. And that's the big circle building that's on almost all of the postcards and pictures of Oxford when you search for it on the internet. From there, we walked down New College Lane to arrive at the entrance of New College Chapel. A chapel you can visit, by the way. though you might have second thoughts after hearing Rob's next story.
So this story is based in New College. We're looking at New College now with its magnificent doorway there, a little door to let people in and out. And as you can see, people can pay to go into New College. It's a popular one for visitors, partly because part of the Harry Potter films were made here. But that's true a lot of Oxford, actually. My story is about the chapel, which is just beyond where we're standing here. As we look at the entrance, then it's the principal's lodging there. And actually there's a little cut in the wall so the principal can look into the chapel to see who's going to the chapel or not. It's not part of the story. This is about the organ scholar. Now, they still have organ scholars, but not so many, so sometimes they share organ scholars between them. But a very important part of it, realizing that in the past there was a service every day and the students had to attend that service. There would be somebody ticking off the names, and if you didn't get enough ticks, you didn't get your degree. So, the story is about this organ scholar who was practicing late at night. He came here, he had keys, so he could open the chapel, nobody else there, switched a few lights on, not very many, and then up the stairs. Now, try to create the picture, then you've got the area where the preacher stands at the front, and then that faces the organ, which is up very high. So one of the things about that is the organist has a mirror, a big mirror, so he can look through that and see what the chaplain is. In Oxford it's called a chaplain, when they want the music to start and so on. It's an important part of the story. So he's gone up the stairs, switched just a few lights on, a light over the keyboard of the organ, and so on. And he's playing away, pling, blang, 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 blang. And he thinks he sees something down near the altar, something white moving. He looks in his mirror very closely, but it's gone, it's nothing. So he carries on practicing away, and then he sees it again. And this time it's getting brighter. And as he looks in his mirror, he can see it's a man with very, very white hair, very, very white skin, and as he comes towards him, pink eyes. He's terrified. And the man who's flying towards him from the altar is very, very angry. He can see he is. So he drops everything, rushes out, leaving the light on and everything, locks the chapel up and goes home terrified. The next day he goes to see his tutor, which is quite usual. You usually got a good relationship with your tutor, and explains what had happened. And the tutor says, "Come with me." And he takes him to the dining hall. You can't quite see it from here, but it's on the left of the main quad. Lovely dining hall, actually. And at the end that shares a wall with the chapel is where the fellows and the tutors of the college sit. Now, on that wall, there are lots of pictures of previous important people of the college, lots of them. So he takes him to one in particular and he points to it, and the organ scholar says, "That's him, that's who I saw." And the tutor said, "That is the Reverend Spooner." Now the Reverend Spooner is very famous actually, but one of the things about him, he looked on the picture again, he's got this very pale skin and these pink eyes. And his tutor then says, yes, he was an albino, pink eyes and white skin and so on. And it turns out he was very famous. Now, you may not have heard of this, but there is a thing called a Spoonerism, or things called a Spoonerism. He had this peculiar defect, besides being an albino, that he interchanged things along the way. So one of the things he said, "You were caught fighting a liar in the quad." That's ridiculous. Can't possibly be right. But what he's really trying to say is you were caught lighting a fire in the quad. And these are called Spoonerisms. And there are lots of them. Well, actually, as a child, when I was at school, they taught us about Spoonerisms. So, yes, so that's the Reverend Spooner. Now, the point of the story is Reverend Spooner absolutely hated music, really hated music, and that closes the story.
Leaving the echoes of the ghostly organ behind, we head for our last story of the adventure. This one is not in the university, but still a place full of knowledge. Not a library, but a museum.
We're actually in the cellar of the History of Science Museum at the moment, and we're doing that here because this is where dissections took place in the past, and this story is about dissections. So, just to describe it briefly, we're stood next to a little circular staircase, and then there's a whole area above here so that students could stand up there watching a dissection of a human being going on down here. And we can actually see some of the bolt holes where the table was set in here. So that's the background to that. And this dates from the 17th century, and that's when the story began. So it's about a young lady called Anne Green. She was born in a village girl, and there wasn't much work around, so she got a job, as often they did, whilst very, very young, in a rich man's house near her village. While she was there, she fell pregnant. I don't know if that's the correct word, fell pregnant, but the grandson of the rich man who owned the house had impregnated her, poor girl. She was very young, 14 or so. She was thrown out of the house. Dreadful, isn't it? Very sad. So she made her way back to Oxford, and it's here that she had the baby, and it was born prematurely anyway, and it died. And she was accused of killing her own baby. And she was tried and found guilty. And she was then in the prison, which is our castle, actually a very interesting part of Oxford, the castle. She was taken from her prison onto the castle mound, which is where the hangings took place. There's 2 trees on that mound, actually, and they put a pole between the 2 trees and then a ladder against the pole and put the hanging rope over the pole itself. So she was brought out. She was given a chance to address the crowd. Lots of people came to hangings for 2 reasons. One, there wasn't any TV in those days. The other, that the authorities wanted to demonstrate this could happen to you if you commit sins like that. So she did that. Her friends were there, trying to support her, but in the end she had to have the rope around her neck, the bag over her head, and so on, and then she had to go up the ladder until the hangman said stop, and then he kicked the ladder away, and she was hanging there. I won't go through it all, but it took about 20 minutes to die. Her friends were hanging on to her feet so that she died as quickly as possible. Then she stopped, dead, cut down, and then the soldiers who were present to protect the whole ceremony beat her with their musket handles to make sure that she was dead, and she was placed in her coffin. She was then brought here for dissection, because in those days, if you were accused of murder and found guilty and so on, your body became the property of the university for dissection. So she was brought here, left here overnight apparently, and then Petty, the main dissection man, he's quite famous now in history, came to do the dissection. The students all went up the stairs here, looking down on the body. She was taken out of the coffin and laid down, and Petty was about to dissect her face to expose the brain, and he felt with his finger that her nose was quite warm. So he stopped she didn't appear to be dead. So they didn't have smelling salts in those days. They burnt feathers, and the smoke of that was put near her, and she coughed. She'd come to life. So they hired a young woman to lie with her to keep her warm and everything, and then they sat with her to hear what had happened when she was dead. The university people were really interested to know what was it like in hell or heaven. She couldn't talk for quite a long time, a few days, but finally she did, and all she could remember was going up the ladder. She couldn't remember anything else at all, so they were disappointed. So that's the story, but there is an end to it. That's not quite the end. She did go back to her original village, and she took her coffin with her. She had 2 children and died at a reasonably old age and was buried in the coffin that she'd been placed in after her hanging.
So that's a nice happy ending.
Sort of, yes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes.
And I guess ghost-wise, has there been any sightings of her in this building?
No. So it's not a ghost story in that way. It's a very real story. Any of your listeners want to look into it more, you'll find more on the story on the internet.
And it's just amazing she went through so much, though. She was hung 20 minutes and then they beat her. Yeah. They obviously didn't beat her that much then.
Don't suppose it could have damaged her. But she was damaged, and she had to be Petty actually nursed her back to life. And he became famous then as the man who could bring people back to life.
What a nice way to end season 2 of Eerie Excursions. A doctor bringing a woman back to life, and that doctor not being Frankenstein, and that woman not being a monster. Full disclaimer though, Dr. William Petty did not bring anybody else back to life. It was just this one miraculous instant. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed our walk through Oxford. Now you can book on a tour with Rob below. His website also has links to his books about Oxford's ghosts as well. And if you do go to Oxford, and you find yourself at New College Chapel, be warned if that organ is playing. It may end up upsetting the dead. That's it for a while. I really hope you've enjoyed the stories for the dark half of the year. I'm hoping to be back next autumn for new adventures and new stories. But to keep up to date with the podcast, the best way probably is to follow us on Instagram at Eerie Excursions. Also, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel below so you don't miss any updates. I'll see you real soon for another adventure into the darkness.